Welcome to Ask Earl Anything. This is a show where your questions make the show. If I don't have your questions, I don't have a show. This is going to be probably released right at the end of January or beginning of February. It's actually my 2-year anniversary edition. I believe it's my 72nd episode of Ask Earl Anything. And this show started in 2018 as a way to answer questions that people would ask me on drum videos. And today I still get people that ask me questions after drum videos, and my questions for this go-round is going to be about some of those questions from recent drum videos. So I have 2 questions today, basically. Couple updates on what I'm doing with my channel and other things. And let's jump into the questions and we'll get to those things today. So the first question comes from Bill Morehouse, and he asks a question about how does the sound of a Ludwig Acrolite, which has now been featured in a couple of my videos that I just got, how does that Acrolite, sound compared to other Ludwig snare drums? So first off, let's talk about the Acrolite. The Acrolite I have here was given to me by my friend Ken Burton. Ken Burton has been in he helped me with my Mike Frisano Earl Asks Anything video. He was the cameraman that day. Ken's a good friend of mine. He lives in town. Ken found one of these beat up Acrolites in a thrift store. It was really dirty and messed up, and he said, I have 4 of them, here, have one. And he gave it to me. And the reason he gave it to me is because I told him about what I did to my first Acrolite that I owned. I turned it into a timbali way back in the late 80s. Anyhow, the long and the short of it is I cleaned it up. It's a 1980s Acrolite 8 lugs. So it's an 8 lug version. The only thing I did was I upgraded the throw to the P85 from the Millennial that I have, the Millennial Black Beauty I have, because I upgraded the throw on my Black Beauty. And it actually had a decent throw, so I have that throw as one of the things I will use on some other drums someday. All my parts just get recycled other places. But I cleaned it up really nice, sounds awesome. Now, an Acrolite is really a Ludwig Superphonic that doesn't have the chrome on it. When they made Acrolites, they basically took the aluminum shells and they either left them aluminum or they painted them gray. And now they've done some other things to the drums today. And a lot of guys love the Acrolite sound. A lot of studio guys have always had Acrolites in their arsenal to use occasionally. They sound, I guess, a little more opened up because of the aluminum, being more of the raw aluminum, which is what the 60s ones were, really raw aluminum, no paint on them. I believe this one's got a gray paint on it. So it looks like it's got a gray paint on it anyhow. So it still sounds fine, you know what I mean? It sounds like an Acrolite. And for the money I paid for it, which was $0, it's a great drum for me to have, and it sounds cool, and I've used it a few times. And the day that I used it in church a week ago, it was a week ago, Bill sent a question. And that's why we're doing this Ask Earl Anything, because he sent the question. And he had just picked up a Superlite. Now, the Superlites are the Chinese Taiwan version of Ludwig drums. They're kind of like the Superphonics, but they're not Superphonics. They're made in China or Taiwan. Now, the Superlites are steel shells. And the other drums that are made out there are called Black Magic drums. And I have a Black Magic. This is a Black Magic. And this is the brass shell drums with the black finish, black chrome finish on it. And I have an 8x14, Black Magic drum. Now, they weren't making an 8x14 the year I bought this drum. This was 2015 when I bought this, and I got this for 220 bucks. So 220 bucks by an 8x14 brass shell snare drum is killer. This has got a killer sound to it. The Superlites are steel. It's a heavy drum. Wow. Heavier than I remember. It's got those die-cast hoops on it too. I mean, die-cast hoops on a $200 drum. Awesome. Superlites are steel. And that's the big difference in sound to the aluminum sound to the brass sound. The brass sound that everybody's going for with brass drums is the Black Beauty. And that's what the, I'm having a really tough time remembering the name of this drum today. The Black Magic. The Black Magic's got a brass shell, but it's not a spun brass shell. The spun brass shell is seamless. The Superphonic and the Acrylites are seamless aluminum shells. It's the way they spin, or they're called spun shells, the way they make them. The Black Magic has got a weld point on it, and so do the steel drums, the Supralights. So that's the difference, really. If you want to be honest about it, that's the difference. Is it's the way they're made. I will say that the ones coming from Taiwan, the hardware is different. Okay, the throw-offs are different. The Ludwig throw-offs don't even fit onto the Black Magic, because the first thing I wanted to do with this Black Magic was change the throw. The throw-off here is just it looks like a P85, but it's not. It's a standard Chinese version of a P85, you know, which works fine. You know, it's great, it works fine. I've had guys that have had issues with them, but this one works fine, you know. I've got this thing tuned down into fat drum land, okay. But yeah, anyhow, Black Magic, worth the money. Supers are worth the money. I just think, I'm not a big steel drum fan. Some guys really like steel snare drums. I'm not a big fan. I'd rather have the aluminum sound. The aluminum's got a little drier thing. Little different vibe there. So, again, this is nice to have in your arsenal, and they're worth the money if you can get one. You know, don't overpay for it though. If you don't overpay for a 5x14, you're going to end up overpaying for a 6.5x14. But a 6.5x14 is getting more into that bottom type sound. So they didn't make a lot of 6.5x14s. If you find a 6.5x14 from the 70s or the 60s, that's a classic drum that's hard to find. Not a lot of those were made. They made a lot of 5x14s. 5x14 was the snare drum size of the 60s and 70s. So you really didn't start seeing 6.5x14s getting a lot of traction with anybody until John Bonham started playing them. And once he started playing them, then you started to see 6.5x14 showing up everywhere. And by the time I got to getting a drum kit in 75, they were still on most of the kits that came out had 5x14 snare drums. It wasn't unless you special ordered a 6.5x14 did you get one. So I eventually got a 6.5x14. It was not a Ludwig, and I've never had an L402 Superphonic, which is the 6.5x14 snare drum. I've never had one, and I haven't had a Black Beauty either, 6.5x14. It's one of those things that one day I may get for my collection, because I'd like to have that 6.5x14 Ludwig sound that everybody gets. But truthfully, my DMR 6.5x14 cast aluminum does justice for me, so that's why I use it. By the way, everybody's trying to make metal snare drums like Ludwig. That's why you see the outer bead. This is the difference, is this rounded outer bead. The early Yamaha drums had an inner bead. The bead went inside. It kind of curved in instead of out. Now they all try to make this outer bead. It does something to the sound. I don't know. It's got me what it really does, but it's in these drums pretty good, all of them. Again, you pick up one of these things cheap enough, they're worth it. You find them dirty and beat them up and clean them up. They clean up really nice and they make a great sound. Supers go for like usually around 200 bucks, maybe a little under, maybe a little over, depending on who's selling it. The Black Magics are usually 300 to 400 bucks. 2015, I actually picked up a B stock special on a drum. The store I bought it from basically called it used, but when I got it, it was brand new. It came out of the bag, it was brand new, has never been touched. Dirt price. It was great. It was worth the money. So anyhow, that's my Ludwig drum story. That's the mystique of Ludwig drums, is getting the sound of John Bonham, getting the sound of Hal Blaine, getting the sound of Steve Gadd. Steve Gadd was a big superphonic player. Until Yamaha finally built him a signature snare drum, and then he started playing that all the time. But if you see Steve Gadd videos from the 70s, 80s, 9 times out of 10, he's going to have a Ludwig Superphonic 5x14. That's his drum. That was the drum he used on many, many things. So the Ludwig sound, especially the aluminum Superphonic sound, is a standard sound in the industry. People love that sound. The Acrylites is a poor man's Superphonic. That's what everybody calls them. Poor man's Superphonic. It's good to have one in your collection. If you don't have a Superphonic, that's a good way to get into it. Great drums. 6.5x14 is not too common, so you're not going to get a lot of those. So anyhow, Bill, thanks for the question. I hope it answered it, and thanks again. My last question comes from Zach Drums, and Zach Drums asked me a question after playing the James Taylor Fire and Rain cover. And on the Fire and Rain cover, I used my Blasticks. Now, before I started the cover, I was going to use some brushes. So he asked the question, and it's about the difference between brushes. I'm just trying to find a pair of brushes. These are actually not a pair, but they are 2 different brushes. This is a Vic Firth. This is a Vader. The difference of the sound of Blasticks versus brushes, and why I went with Blasticks versus the brushes. So on that particular tune, I mean, brushes are a little quieter. Brushes are a little quieter. I could have pulled the tom stuff out with the brushes, but what I was going to do is beat these brushes to the point of getting more bend in them than they already have. As you can see, this is pretty straight today, but one of these, not that one, I have lots of brushes, by the way. This is my other purple. This is so, wow. There you go. You can see it's got a little curve in it. That's the straighter version of the purple one. This has got a little curve in it too. Too many sticks and too many brushes. And this is my other Vader. It's actually pretty straight. These are actually straighter than the purple ones. So I beat brushes pretty good. That's one of my things, is I beat brushes. So all that to say is these got a little lighter sound. These are more the jazzy thing. And with the Blasticks, you don't have the good sweep. But you got a better cymbal sound. And you got a really nice pop to it. And one of the things you can do with Blasticks is you can push the ring up and get even more. It has less definition. You push the ring up. You get, so they feel more like sticks. For that particular cover, they just worked for me that day. Now the other thing about my Blasticks is you like them to get a little bit ratty. So I've had this one for a long time, and I used to have another one of these with the wood handle, but somehow that got lost or broke. I don't think it broke. I think it just, I don't know. It ended up somewhere. It's not here anymore. This one is, I did break one of the plastic ones. And when I broke the plastic one, it left me with another plastic one. So I have 3 of these plastic ones. This is a brand new pair. So I'm working this in, and it's just starting to get ratty. The more ratty it gets, the better it sounds. So it was really a sound choice, Zach. I used these Blasticks for a sound choice. On Fire and Rain, the cool way I mixed the drums on Fire and Rain was I put a lot of reverb on the toms and the snare, and that's what gave it that big sound. And that's kind of what they did to Russ Kunkel's drums. Russ Kunkel was the original drummer on Fire and Rain. There's a bunch of different versions of Fire and Rain out there. One of my favorites is a live one with Carlos Vega playing drums. And Carlos Vega used Blasticks too. He was another guy who would pull Blasticks out. And whenever I've seen Russ Kunkel play with James Taylor, he was either using Blasticks or rods on that song because he wanted to get more sound. The reason why James Taylor recorded Fire and Rain with brushes was they were rehearsing in James's apartment, from what I've heard the story goes, and he had to play quietly. So he just got used to playing with brushes, getting a lighter sound. And when he got to the studio, the engineer saw him messing with the brushes, and he said, hey, let's record those. And then he put the big, it was the way he hit the drum and then the way they put the reverb on it. And it just was huge. And it really was a sound. James has slowed that song down a lot. So the original song is actually a little quicker than it sounds live if you listen to James playing it live today. But I thought the cover turned out well, and I love the way the Blasticks sounded on that particular track. So I had a lot of fun mixing that track. Just so you all know, and I said this on my last video I did, and I'm going to keep saying it on a lot of videos probably. All my tracks now in 2020 are made with a software program called Xtrax Stems 2. And if you're a YouTube drummer and you love doing drum covers, but you can't play it perfectly exact and you can't overplay, can't play over top of the original drummer well enough, get your hands on Xtrax 2. When I first got it, the first couple weeks, I was doing something when I was recording my drum tracks where I wasn't using the original drummer track for anything. I was basically not even bringing it into the session, just bringing in the music and the vocal. Because what it does is it separates a song into vocal, music, and drums. And now they've got a new version that separates it into vocal, music, drums, and bass. So I haven't used the one with the fourth track yet, but they have it. I've been invited to download it. I haven't used it yet. But one of the things I learned from Trey B, Trey basically said that he always does his drum covers with the original track there. And because you get the original track, you can bring it into your session with the original track and just bring the volume of the drums down so you can hear it, but you don't have to play, you're not fighting it, which is nice. The drum covers I've done with this so far that I've had a lot of fun with, but had no drum track on, was Asia, Fire and Rain. I believe when I did Up on the Roof, James Taylor Up on the Roof, that was not done with the track, any drums on it at all, or click. The other thing I learned to do with Xtrax Stems is in Logic, if you bring in all three stems and you have a separated drum track, in Logic you can go to a beat detection aspect that's in part of the conductor track. So they've got tempo, and then I think they call it beat detection, to be honest. But you go in, maybe it's beat analysis. You go to beat analysis and you have it just analyze the drum track. And what it'll do is it'll create a click track for you. And then you can actually use the click track to tempo map the whole song. And sometimes it works famously, and other times it doesn't work very well at all. So what I've been learning to do with my drum covers of late is I either use the original track with the volume way back, or I make a tempo mapped click track, or you don't do it at all. You just take it off and you free fly it. When you free fly it, you're kind of floating a little bit. It can be a little scary. I did a song last week called Time by Phil Keggy. Got a lot of reaction to that song. And that particular song had so much tempo movement by the guys playing on it that I needed the drummer in there a little bit to be able to know where I was going sometimes. Not so much the the changes of grooves, but more for where the tempo was going, because it was kind of moving. So I put the drummer in, and I locked right into it, and it was a couple 3 takes and I was done. I was struggling before that. When I did Asia, I didn't have the drums in at all. So my whole Asia take was all without drums, without a click, without nothing. And somehow it locked in. And that was an amazing drum track for me. It's actually one of my favorite tracks I've done yet. That Time was another one. But some of the early Xtrax stems songs I've done, the early ones were done without a click or without the drums being in at all. But I'm learning that it's just better to have that reference track there for either tempo mapping the song with a click or having it there just in case you need to pull it in. And so now whenever I export my stems, I export all of them. And then I bring them all into the session, and then I decide if I want to mute it, bring the volume down on it, create a click track, or use it without. And I will tell you that Xtrax Stems 2 is worth the money, and if you're doing a lot of drum covers, it's the way to go. And if you're a guy that's figured this out through my video or Trey B's videos or Jeff Holden's videos, let me know. Because I'm starting to see guys doing it now, and now you're starting to see a lot of different covers that are not the ones that you can get the free drumless tracks for. Because that was getting kind of, I was getting tired of doing the same tracks everybody else was doing. So now I'm doing stuff I want to do. Plus, you know, I want to play what I want to play. So that's pretty much it. And I've done some pretty adventuresome stuff in the last year. Like I did some Tom Scott. I did Steve Gadd week. I was doing a bunch of Steve Gadd. And I wish I had this Xtrax then. Because some of those tracks would have just been tighter without having to bury Steve's playing or Hal Blaine's playing or whoever the drummer was on the track. This just makes it a lot easier. So anyhow, that's Ask Earl Anything for this week. A couple other things, just to let you know. I'm just doing videos I want to do these days. I'm not sure how much I want to talk on camera anymore. I mean, I've done a review of some in-ear monitors because a company sent me in-ears, and they worked out great, and I'm using them occasionally. They're fun to use. I have a really nice set of professional in-ear monitors, so this video that I did about the in-ear monitors is more for them because they were nice enough to send me the headphones. By the way, if anybody wants to send me stuff, I'll be happy to review it, you know, so let me know. I do a lot of review of how I think of products here all the time, for nothing, for free, you know. Just because I got a set of in-ears, I gave you my honest opinion on them. They actually were pretty good for the price. So you gotta take everything with a grain of salt. But truthfully, I'm not having as much fun speaking on camera, and my drum covers are my drum covers. Either you like them, you don't like them, you want to comment on them, you don't want to comment on them, it's okay. I'm doing them for me right now more than anybody else. So this whole channel is about me having fun and having a good time. I do appreciate the people that write on my channel. I do appreciate the people that like my drumming, and I thank you all for being here and watching my shows and stuff. But I got to be honest, for me, playing music is about playing music. I'm in some really great creative projects right now, working on some more new music with people, and that's always fun when I'm working on new music. So that's cool. So a lot of cool stuff going on. Anyhow, that's it for me. Anyhow, if I don't have questions, there's no way I'm going to have a show. So if you like this show, please ask questions. When you ask questions, it'll draw me out to do another show, okay? I'm going to try to keep going once a month until I see no interest and no questions. And then it'll be like Ask Earl fades into the YouTube universe, okay? And another reason for that, I have to tell you, is there's so many great shows out there that if you want to learn about equipment, there's this one channel that just does, I'm not endorsing this channel, so I don't need to get it right. It's like Tunes Like a Drum, Racks Like a Drum, I don't know what it's called. They got a production team. Those guys are great. You want to learn how to tune a drum, watch their tuning ideas. It's great, some cool stuff they put up there. You want to look at guys tearing drums apart and rebuilding them, watch AR Drummer. If you want to see somebody who's done it a lot more and has got more subscribers, watch our David. You know what I mean? Our David's got almost 200,000 subscribers now. He's off the chain, and he's hawking all kinds of stuff because he's got the viewership. I'm really not going for that right now. I don't think I'm ever going to go for that, to be honest. That's why I haven't gone with the affiliate program with Amazon. It's why I'm not changing my channel to anything that would make more money for me, because I don't care about making money. These drum covers don't make money, guys. You all have to realize that. Talking shows do. You can make money with talking shows. And, you know, I've made a few $100 on Google over the last couple of years, but to be honest, I don't need the few $100 for that much. You know what I mean? It's just, you know, I figured since I'm doing these, I may as well monetize it, you know. So, but the YouTube world's about getting exposure for people. And that's why people do YouTube today. And that's why people do Instagram. And one of the reasons why I do it is for myself to see my playing. I have a friend who just started a channel. I think he's called Babinga Basher. I think he's got 10, 11 subs. His name's Todd. Used to go Toasty. He asked a few questions here. Check out Todd's channel. You know, Todd just started this channel and he's just putting up drum covers. And one of the things he said was, after doing drum covers, I started to see the things I do wrong to me in one of the comments. And I said, yeah, that's what you start to see. You start to see the things you do wrong. You start to understand your playing. So from that perspective, it's really cool to do drum covers because I can see some of the things I do wrong. And maybe I'll do a show where I actually do some introductions to some of the guys, the newer guys that I'm finding. I just found a guy who does a whole bunch of Chicago songs. I can't remember his name. Really great player. I think he goes to university in Pennsylvania somewhere. Great drummer. Oh, awesome drummer. I mean, that's what you. I want to watch the I'm inspired by some of the younger drummers. So when I find a young drummer that plays his butt off, I'll tell you about him. Found a girl that plays her butt off too the other day. Maybe that's not the right way to say that, but you know, so maybe I'll do a show where I actually talk about some of those people in the future that are inspirations to me that I found, you know. But I don't see me starting, you know, here's the next drummer to go sub to, guys. I'm not going to do that kind of stuff. But there are some great players out there, and I just want to make sure that, you know, you guys find them eventually. You know, I do find them eventually. They find me. Somehow they show up in my feed from YouTube. And that's the other part of YouTube, is YouTube gives you what they want to give you these days. It's really hard to get out from under that too. I keep deleting my history and I still get the same stuff somehow. So, anyhow, I've rambled on long enough. I've probably lost most of you by now anyhow, so thanks for watching. And remember, your questions make the show. And have a great week. Take care. Bye.